Well, you can see I got the bolt out of there. So, but what I'm going to do, I noticed this side just has a bushing in it, and I tapped out the bolt a little bit on the other side because I'm just going to inject grease in here. I can see the bushing is good. It's still got grease in there from last time I did it. I forget what that gets torqued at, that bolt. I think it's 50 foot-pounds, and it's got Loctite on it. But what I was hoping to do, but I'm going to do something else. And somebody will say this is Mickey Mouse, but I don't really think so. God, there's so much glare on his phone, I can't see nothing. You can see how I knocked this out a little ways. Now I was hoping to get this, it's called like a dust cover. It's not really a seal. It's designed to keep out contamination and water and dirt inside. There's like a bearing on this side and a bearing on that side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a tiny little hole in that dust cover, which will be covered up by this bolt. And actually I could put maybe a drop of weather strip adhesive or something like that behind the bolt to keep, to make sure it doesn't get dirt in there. The real reason these bearings and bushings go bad, it's not like there's a lot of wear on them, like movement. It's called contamination, and not so much dirt and dust, but water, because water makes the bearings corrode and rust. That's really 90% of it right there. Even dirt, even a little, like, you're not going to get like major gritty dirt like gravel or something. You might get a little fine dust, but if there's a lot of grease, that still isn't going to be much of a problem. It's water. So what I'm thinking of doing is I got this needle grease thing adapter, which I can put on the end of the grease gun, and I was going to take a drill bit that is the same size, and so this will be like an interference fit. You'd have to jam it in there, and where the grease would have to be forced back all the way in all the bearings. Now, of course, that's not going to be checking the bearings, but that's going to be forcing in new grease and forcing out old grease out the back. It might take a little while to do it, but it'd be a hell of a lot less bull crap than taking off the swing arm and doing it that way. And also, I wouldn't even have to take the wheel off to inject some grease. I just have to take that one bolt out of that side right there, tap out the long bolt, and then inject some grease, and also just grease the bushing and put it back together. I wouldn't even have to take the wheel off or nothing, because I think as long as the stuff's got fresh grease in there, stuff don't wear out. These guys in Harley, man, they could have put a couple of grease fittings on that thing, but what they're doing is it's called job security for the dealership. That's what it's called. But like I said, the reason these bearings the wheel bearings, like actually any of the bearings, really, it's contaminants that freaking kill them. If you had perfect lubrication all the time, I don't think you'd ever change these bearings. Probably last freaking 50 or 100 years, for crying out loud, with using a bike every year, a bunch of miles. The wheel bearings, like I said, the black ones, they were still good. I was surprised. There's still a lot of grease in the bushing. I know I packed a slew of grease in the other bearings last time I did them. So what I'm just going to do is I could drill a hole, and what I'll do is I can even take a thin piece of plastic tape, which would go between the bolt and the washer, that's dust cover, and it would just crush it, over that to make it like a little gasket seal, I mean, that would work too. But there's not going to get any dirt in there with the bolt over it, with a tiny little hole like that with marine grade grease. That bearing back there, it's so stupid the way they make that, the way they don't have a grease fitting on there. Like I said, even the older bikes with the laced wheels back in the 70s, you had grease fittings in the hubs. And personally, I bet you they could make the axle with a little port hole that you can have a grease fitting, say here, and maybe just take it out, or put like a a Torx head bolt in there after you use the grease fitting, and you can have inside the axle where they should make this in the aftermarket, where there'd be a little bit of grease coming, like a tiny hole. I mean, 1/8 inch. I mean, it's not going to affect the strength of the axle, whereby it would pour it out to the bearings inside. Right where the seal meets the bearing. That's about where you would do it, just on the inside of the seal. So you would fill up both sides of the bearing that way without taking anything apart. It would make it way easier, because as long as you put a lot of grease and stuff, shit it doesn't wear out. It doesn't wear out. So I'm going to go ahead and do this like this. Some going to say it's Mickey Mouse, but I don't think so. I think it's a lot better, because if I ruin a part, the only part I'm going to ruin on it is the dust cover, the metal dust cover that goes over that bearing. That's the only thing I'll be ruining. But it's going to be a tiny little hole, that big, just enough to put that in there. And the bolt head is going to cover that. If you put a drop of weather strip adhesive over that or something after you fill it up with grease, it's not going to get any grease in there. It's not going to get any contaminants in there. But I'll be able to push through all new grease this way. So that's a cool thing, using your head. And if I take this apart, if I have to take this apart and ever have to change, like right now, I could see that nothing's really screwed up on it. It's been loaded up with a lot of grease by me before. That's why the bearings in the rear wheel held up. But if I have to take this apart and do it all over and put new bearings in or something, there's going to be grease fittings on this damn thing. There might be 2 on that side, on the opposite side, that side, because there's an inner and outer bearing. But screw it, 2 little bearings with an angle, 90-degree angle, and 1 by the bushing. I'll figure something out. I mean, I'm not gonna be playing this game all the time with this garbage. This is stupid. They kind of aggravate me with a lot of things. I like the old bikes, but I like some of the new technology, like if a shovel head or an iron Sportster got 80 to 100,000 miles on the top end, I would be going with one of those for sure. But that's why I consider this a newer style bike. But even though it's an '89, that's why I go with the Evo, because the top. I mean, I don't have to do a top end every 20 to 30,000 miles like you'd have to do on an Ironhead Sportster or a shovel. Or maybe you might get 50, but you can get over 100 on an Evo. So, and that's the other flip side. But for everything they do better, they do something else worse. That's what burns me up about them. I like things real simple. Well, that didn't work out exactly as planned, but it still worked out okay. I was able to get the dust cover off of here, and I injected a load of grease in here, so when I push this dust cover on and the bolt tightens, it's going to squeeze all into even the second bearing. Which you could probably do, though. I noticed where I started drilling the holes, it was actually going towards I don't know, I guess the inner race of the bearing or something. It didn't damage nothing. It wasn't hitting any rollers, or it didn't get on the inside of the race, just the outside. If you probably could put right here on the edge here, an access port, because the bearing is, see where it is right here? These are the rollers right there. So if you inject grease, you had a little access port here, and you can just, cover it up with some, weather strip adhesive when you're done or something like that. Or something, maybe an O-ring or something, that would make it a lot easier, because if you force the grease in here, it's going to go all through to the second bearing too. I know there's a snap ring in there, but you're still going to get the grease in there, and that's the whole thing, is just keep the damn water out. I think the one reason the bearings survived on the wheel bearings really well, last time I think the first, I was usually using Lucas marine grade grease. The last time I was using Slick 50 grease. That's by Slick 50. So, maybe that's, because I tell you, man, nothing really wears out unless you if you keep it clean grease in there, you shouldn't have to freaking take it all apart to put clean grease. So you see, that's what I had. Slick 50, one grease. Only, you know, it's like, shit's pretty good stuff. So now on the other side, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grease right in here a lot and move this in and out, and just work it in with a bunch of grease, moving it back and forth, and then I'll clean off the bolt real good and put Loctite on it, torque it down. Like I said, as long as it's got loads of grease in there, the parts aren't going to wear, man. It's the moisture. It's not even so much the dirt, it's the moisture. And you're not going to get like heavy dirt in there, you're going to get a little dust. But if it's loaded down with grease, there's a little tiny amount of, you know, because there's not much movement in these parts, man. It's the freaking moisture that rusts out the bearings. You know, look where it is. The wheel's kicking up all crap right in that area, right? So all the bottom of the bike is getting wet. So I don't know, but that's, you know, that makes it a hell of a lot easier to do this, because now I can leave the wheel on, maybe jack the bike up a little bit. If I want to inject some grease in there, I got, you know, these two little notches that are behind this bolt. That gives me where I can pry this out, inject a shitload of grease in there every once in a while, and I can do that every 5 or 8,000 miles, and it's not like, because, you know, if you take this swing arm on, I mean, yeah, it's not a big deal. You got to take the pipe off and shit. You know, get an O-ring gasket, take the chain guard off, and, you know, take your brake caliper off and stuff. Yeah, I know it's not that much of a big deal, but it just adds more time. Like I said, if you just freaking put a bunch of clean grease in there, the hell with it, man. You're done. You know? So, and like I said, before, when I was changing the oil on the forks, I was going to make these caps. These are, I don't know where the hell I found them, but you can see the fork nut. It's got an insert in it. Now, before, I had to go in there with, I don't forget what the hell it is. I think I still got it over here someplace. This thing. I'm going to put a big, long extension on it with this socket. And it had to be, you know, going to a 3/8 because the half-inch would get in the way. I had to use this socket and press down on a spring. It was a pain in the ass. Now, I mean, I would, you know, you try several tries. You got to watch you don't cross-thread these or nothing down here, right? You know, which I haven't, of course. It's just a little bit of grease over here or something. But the thing is, you know, with this, it's real easy. They should make that way from the bike. It should be that way from the factory as it is. And I don't, you know, it's weird that it's hard to find these. There's a little bit of, like a sealant or something over here. But it's hard to find these. You know, it's like if you go to like most of the, you know, Dennis Kirk or something, JP Cycles, you're not going to find these. I didn't see them anywhere. That makes changing the fork oil real easy. So, you know, this makes this swing arm bearing, just adding a bunch of grease to it, a lot easier. So that's the way it should be. That's the way it's going to be. Well, I just stuck an adjustable in there to hold a big nut when I was tightening it up on this side. So when I was tightening it up, this bolt, it's 50 foot-pounds as I remembered right. Put a bunch of Loctite blue. And you also got to remember, like when you're greasing everything, make sure there's no grease on the threads inside the bolt where I guess the long, I don't know, what do you call that, the axle shaft or whatever for the swing arm, where the bolt goes into, get all the grease out of there. So I used some Q-tips on and some starting fluid. Got it, you know, just sprayed the starting fluid on the Q-tips and make sure to get all the grease off that. And before I did all that, I was able to pull out the bushing part way with the needle nose pliers, and I could see there's a lot of grease in there still. I just kept adding grease and working it back and forth and side to side, and just kept working grease in there. So the bushing got grease in there. So it should be pretty good. Like I said, as long as it ain't dry, that's really what the hell happens with these damn things. They get rusted out. They don't really wear so much. Well, I got the new tires here. That's the front, that's the rear. This is a 90-90-19. This was a 9100-19, and I remember it was trying to move the fender up, just almost touched the fender. So I got a 90-90 or 90-90-19 like it's supposed to be. So just broke the bead, and I put this Gorilla Tape over here that holds the spacer in. It also keeps any dirt out getting in where I just greased everything, you know. So I'll break the rest of the bead on this tire now, and then we'll clean up the rim with wire brush on a drill or whatever, like a nylon wheel. And you got a rotation on here. It's got an arrow, so you can see it right there, drive. You know, put it whichever way the wheel spins. And usually there's a little mark on the tire. That's the low weight. So usually you want to put that about where the valve stem is. Actually, these better tires they got today, you really don't need to balance them. That's kind of like old school shit from when they had tubes and tires weren't made as good. So I never balanced these. They seem to really ride nice, but they're probably still okay even though they're 6 years old. They were never really in the UV sunlight, so you know. But I don't want to take no chances. Well, the tire's on here. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get it on here, but actually sometimes those screwdrivers work better than the tire levers because you can kind of get up in smaller areas, and I don't know. Also, I squeeze the tire together like with a C-clamp, because this part, you want it away from where it mounts to the rim. You want it more towards the center of the tire. This way, this tire pulls over more, and you can get it over the bead. If it's sitting in the bead here, it's going to be impossible to get it over the bead. So I don't know if a lot of people know that. We know the tire people know that. But this bead, you want it down where it gets in here, so it goes forward this way, so you can pull it over, you know, over the top and get it in there. And you got to make sure your direction's correct. So I don't know, I've verified it a few times already. There's the rotation right there. So, you know, it's this way. The bike is that way. This is on the disc brake is on the left side in the rear, and the sprocket's on the right side on the Sportster. Just the opposite of the big ones, you know. The Sportster's not really that small though. It's not a small bike either. It's a small, well, today it's, I guess they got smaller ones than Sportsters. They got 750s and 500s or something. So whatever. It's a good medium large. I guess it's sort of like medium large, whatever the hell you want to call it. But you know, next step, when you torque on the axle bolt, first you're gonna make sure you got your spacers in there and all that stuff correctly, exactly the way you put them. It goes to up to 65 foot-pounds, but you want to make sure everything's lined up with the chain adjuster, and also when you're torquing that bolt, there's a cotter pin. If the cotter pin doesn't line up, you want to go to the next part where it lines up, so you can put that cotter pin in a bolt. You don't back it off. But actually, I'm probably going to do that on another video, because I might have to shorten the chain on this sucker, and with the slightly smaller sprocket in the back. This thing's gonna be, it's geared about, you know, as highway as you can really get. I mean, without going with some kind of custom sprocket, but you really can't put a 24 tooth in the front, and it's a 1-to-1. And I guess, I don't know, maybe go to a larger tire or something, but it should be plenty freaking good for the highway. And it's got enough torque to freaking pull first gear, even with 4-speed. So, and I really don't think, I think these tires, even though they're 6 years old, they don't seem like, you know, bad. I might spray them down with some of that. If I would have done that, these tires have been sprayed down with the 303 Marine UV protectant on the inside and the outside. The new ones that went on there. And I got a feeling I'm not going to leave them on there that long anyway. I'll probably wear them out. But you know, if these, like these, I was only using the bike every once in a while, for over this last 6 years, and they got a lot of meat on them. And if I would have sprayed them down with that UV protectant, I wouldn't have been changing tires right now. So, you know, but I still think those weren't too bad. And these are made in England. They're Avon Roadmasters. And if you change one tire, you change both. Or let's say, for instance, you know, you maybe got to put a new rear tire on, only maybe the rear tire wore out or something. In that case, make sure you get the exact same brand. Don't you know, don't mix and match brands and stuff. Don't get a Dunlop and a Continental. I used to like the Continental Blitz, but you know, this is the first time I'm using these, but I know these Avon Roadmasters are pretty good tires. Made in the UK.